It's your Locked On Flyers podcast for Wednesday, December 21st. Your daily dose of Flyers news, analysis, and high quality content that is very happy for Travis Konecny. What a performance in that game against Columbus.
Yeah, he was the best guy in the ice.
Absolutely. All right, we're going to talk about that and get to your mailbag questions on today's show.
Your Locked On Flyers, your daily podcast on the Philadelphia Flyers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hey there, I am Rachel Donner. You can find me on Twitter at rmiriam. I'm here as always with Russ Cohen, who is on Twitter at Sportsology and is reporting from the Wells Fargo Center. Thanks for making Locked On Flyers your first listen every day. You can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Locked On Flyers. That's where you'll keep up to date on all the Flyers news and our episodes. You can also email the show at lockedonflyers@gmail.com, and that's how you get your mailbag questions answered on the show. Locked On Flyers is free and available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Odyssey, wherever you get your podcasts. So subscribe. You'll get all of our episodes here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Plus, we're over on YouTube, so subscribe there as well. Russ, I gotta say, the more I see out of them, I love this Frost JVR Tippett line.
Yeah, they're doing really well right now. They're clicking. Morgan Frost a little more decisive in what he's doing. Tortorella was right in saying that he's passing less and trying to really take more
Yeah.
shots and and you could see he's got more confidence. I think it was a confidence thing. So I'm happy to see that. Owen Tippett had a really good game, no question about it. He was hustling. His puck retrieval was real good. That was something that Tortorella talked about. I talked to him about it, and he has been working on it. So you're seeing a progression with those guys. JVR certainly helping them, but the odd thing about this team, and it's hard to deny it, there's almost like talking points because now all of a sudden they're a young team, and it's like, oh really? How young are they? Like there's plenty of veterans on this team. And so all of a sudden they're trying to rebrand. And I find that interesting, but that line has done very well.
Yeah, I think with Owen Tippett, you noticed he had a couple of good chances earlier in
Yes.
the game before he scored, and he just had a lot of time with the puck. And that's where I think he just overthinks it
Mm-hmm.
and doesn't quite know what to do with it. But then, when you have, a quicker play where he doesn't have that time, sure enough, he pots one. And then
Yes.
it was something we've talked about is the Flyers defending on the 6-on-5 at the end of the game and that they
Ugh.
hadn't done it well. This time, a little better, and Owen Tippett ends up with the puck in the net. So
Yes.
I think, there's something to be said for that. Still could use improvement, absolutely, but I don't think they were turtling quite as bad
No, they
this
weren't
time.
turtling. No, that's true. I mean, it
Yeah.
was better, and they did eventually get the puck. So that that was a positive. There's still 10 giveaways, odd man rushes. Like there was way too much of that. But the the interesting thing was Konecny really, took over the game. It looked like Goudreau was going to do it early, so that was good. That's a real positive sign. But Kevin Hayes played his worst game of the year, worse than when he was benched. Now he's just out there barely doing anything. He was barely checking. He was, the one shot he had was a very weak shot. Like it was like had nothing
Mhm.
behind it. And then of course John Tortorella's saying that we in the media are pitting him against the player, which is ridiculous. But the media is not doing that. Like Tortorella is the one that commented again the other day on it, not the media. So that's a situation where it's still ongoing. There's no question about it, and you could see it on the ice.
Yeah, I do think it was not a good effort overall from Kevin Hayes. That is
No.
for sure. And honestly, I mean, you see Scott Lawton, right? While he was on the penalty kill, connecting with Travis Konecny
Yes.
on that shorthanded goal. And you could see when Scott Lawton is in good situations, he does really good things. Now,
He
he
does.
did get completely destroyed by Goudreau, but
Oh yeah.
you know, he did make up for it afterward, but still, I think that, on a line with Kevin Hayes, the way Hayes is playing right now, and Zach McEwen, that is not the best circumstance for Scott Lawton to be
No,
successful, I think.
I do feel like
But
he
I don't
needs to.
blame him.
No, it's not him. Of course not. It's the coaching staff. I do feel like they need to break him away from Kevin Hayes right now because he had a lot
Yeah.
more energy than Hayes. Hayes didn't match his energy. So you're right on with that.
Yeah, I also want to talk about Cam York, who is absolutely continuing to make the case to stay with the Flyers. Just really smart, I think, puck movement in this one. And he's getting more confident with the puck and away from the puck. I think he's just smarter in cutting off angles. And he's getting rewarded now with the 2 assists in this game,
Hmm.
and, I really sincerely think he's with the team now for the
I,
duration.
I think so too. I mean, we talked about it. We knew he was going to get this chance eventually. So he's earned it. Tortorella had something to say about that, saying that the media pissed and moaned when he got sent down, which I don't think it was that much of an outcry. And then
It was
said
just a
good.
surprise, less than an
Right.
outcry.
Yeah, but he made it out to be more dramatic. And and they did a good job, and he did a good job in Lehigh, and they worked on the right things. And that's a situation where that wouldn't have happened last year. Like that's a positive with Lehigh, where somebody went down, came up,
Mhm.
and then they were good enough to stay. So that's good. I mean, and again, it's Cam York. He's a little better than most who go to Lehigh. Anyhow, we have to be fair about that. But he still worked on the right things and I'm happy. And so, yeah, you're seeing good play out of him.
Yeah, most definitely. I'm very, very happy for him. Uh, I would say also that Tony D'Angelo played a much better game
Hmm.
this time around than the last game, actually making some really solid defensive plays and then stepping up offensively and, taking chances that you would have seen from him last year that maybe we haven't seen as much this year. Not a lot of, there's only one power play, so not a lot of time to see him out there in that
Well, but
situation.
he could
But
do better 5-on-5, like offensively, but defensively, this was a
yeah,
good game for him.
yeah, I definitely think so. Of course, that like one dive to save the
Yes.
2-on-1, and then he just picked up the puck and skated really fast down the ice.
Yeah.
I thought that was a really good play from him,
He had
and
one good scoring chance offensively, but that's all
mhm.
I tracked.
Yeah, I just think that overall, not he still needs some work, but he definitely improved over the last game out, and I think that's what we can ask from him right now.
Yeah. I mean, this is a situation where they had to win this one, so they did. So that's good. They can't play like this against the Leafs, though. They can't.
Oh, no. Oh, no. That is for sure. And, now I worry a little bit because they did play Carter Hart in this game, did not play Felix
Nobody in the press
Sandstrom.
box understood it either. Like we all were like, this was the perfect opportunity to not play him. The other team's playing their third string goalie who didn't have a particularly good game. They had 11
Oh,
guys down,
no.
and why is Carter Hart in there? Like why?
Yeah, I don't know. It was not a good decision, most definitely, because with the game in the afternoon on Thursday, that's less time to recover.
Yep.
And, this one wasn't like a huge problem for Carter Hart in terms of effort required, but still, a game is a game.
Third period, there were some pileups, and at the end of the game, he got a puck in a bad spot.
Well, that is true.
So there was that.
Yes, there was that. Little bit of worry there for a little bit until
It
people
was.
figured out
I
what
tweeted, and
happens.
then we started talking, and somebody said, "I think it was there," and I was like, "Okay, yeah, that makes sense based on the way he reacted."
Yeah, yeah. All right. Any final thoughts on this game?
I mean, the final thoughts are just clean it up a little more defensively. I wish there were more players that had the effort that Travis Konecny has, because not everybody is showing that effort on this team still.
Yeah, I think those are wise words, but a victory nonetheless, and
Yep.
we appreciate every single one of them.
Oh yeah, it's better to cover a win than a loss for sure.
Yes. All right, we're gonna get to your mailbag questions coming up next.
Today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline.net is your number one source for sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. Get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there. From football to college baseball season, basketball to soccer, esports, and of course the NHL, we've got it all on betonline.net. And if you love your sports podcasts like ours, you could find those at BetOnline as well. We're always the fastest and easiest way to get your betting fix. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts.
Check out the Locked On Sports Today podcast. From the games that matter the most to the biggest stories in sports, go beyond the scoreboard and behind the scenes with local experts and insights only Locked On can provide. Locked On Sports Today, available wherever you get your podcasts. Russ, we have a little bit of a heated mailbag today, I would
Yeah.
say, based on what's been going on with the team. And, we're going to come in strong with John, who wants to know, do you think Torts' handling of Kevin Hayes, mostly justified, according to John, has anything to do with the fact that Hayes is or was an Alain Vigneault guy?
No, I don't think anything has to do with that. There's the one thing I'll give Torts credit for is he doesn't really look back and worry about, hey, that's a that guy player. I'm going to get rid of him. He's not like that. So no, I don't think so.
Um, yeah, I I would tend to think that's the case. I think with GMs, sometimes you see like a trend of like, oh, that's the last guy's draft pick, and I want
Yes,
to be my team now. But with coaches, I think it's a different story.
same. I agree.
Another good question on this whole drama. Does the Torts Hayes situation have an effect on other players potentially speaking up?
I don't think so. He didn't really want to speak up. It's not. There's no benefit to speaking up with John Tortorella as your coach because it's going to come back at you. So unless you're super frustrated, you're not going to really hear guys speak out against him.
Yeah, I think that's probably right, that they may be talking amongst themselves behind the scenes and getting it out with their friends and family or
Yeah.
whatever that they need to do in order to get through the day, but they're not gonna talk about it with the media, unless directly asked, and in which case, I think they're most likely going to just say something neutral.
Hmm.
Something along the lines of he's the coach, he makes the decisions, but with less bite to it than
Yes.
maybe the way Kevin Hayes had to go about it. But yeah, I think it's something that stays behind closed doors. So Mario had a really good question about line combos that of course is now a little out of date because Sedlak isn't on the team
Yeah.
anymore, but he seems to think, that some things aren't working and that Hayes should be moved back to center because he's more effective there, and that Noah Cates should go back to wing, and Farabee needs new line mates. And he would put Farabee on a line with Hayes and Konecny. And so we can look at his top two lines and see if it makes sense. So he wants Hayes centering Farabee and Konecny, and then Frost centering JVR and Tippett.
I mean, for the most part, it makes sense. Farabee, Hayes, Konecny has happened before, but the problem is this version of Kevin Hayes is bad on faceoffs more times than he's good, and that's going to be the issue there. So if you told me he was going to be a 50% faceoff guy or close to it, I'd say okay. But there's games where he's over 50, and then there's games where he's like 30 something.
Yeah. I think that is an issue. And also, like, Farabee has been struggling a little bit. And so, there's two ways to look at this particular line. You say, oh, you put him back on a line with Travis Konecny, who is arguably the hottest hand on the team, right?
Hmm.
So maybe that sparks him to play better. And I see that side of it. But then also, Travis Konecny needs effective line mates, and Joel Farabee is struggling right now. So and Hayes obviously is struggling defensively. So do you put those guys together, and does that really make sense for the big picture? I can see how it would make sense like individually, but for the big picture, I'm not so sure.
Yeah, I agree.
Unfortunately, that puts Noah Cates on a third line on the wing, and I don't know that I like that either. I think Noah Cates needs to be higher in the lineup.
Uh, I think ultimately, based on the way he's played this year, that's true too.
On this team at this time, yeah. I
Yes.
think on your average NHL team, third line is just fine.
Right. Right.
Yeah, so I think that's kind of where I'm at, but I see what he's saying,
Hmm.
in terms
Me
of the
too.
individual guys and what's best for them, but I just don't think it puts together what's best for the team overall right now. Um, our friend Susan is back, and I always love Susan, has
Hmm.
good questions, and she has a little bit of a hot button question here that I'm not sure I want to answer, but it's important, I guess, if you're a newer fan and you want to understand the context. She wants to know if the Rangers fans booed Tony D'Angelo every time he touched the puck at that game, and what is the bad blood between them?
I didn't think it was every time they touched the puck. Maybe they did a couple times and I missed it. Uh, the bad blood goes back to a fight between D'Angelo and I think it was Georgiev,
Mhm.
and so then things were said. D'Angelo said some things, definitely something not right about the Russian player. Got him mad. They were going to fight him. Then Chris Kreider was thinking about fighting D'Angelo, and it became a thing. So that's where the bad blood came from, and that's where eventually D'Angelo left. Why eventually D'Angelo left the Rangers?
Yeah, basically, after all of that went down, and they like really almost came to serious blows
Yes.
between Ranger teammates at that
Yes.
time. And then Tony D'Angelo just like sat
Yep.
and basically didn't play. And then after that, the next season, that's when Carolina signed him.
Right.
So
That's right.
yeah,
Yeah. They didn't trade him. That's right. He just sat.
yeah. So it was a real big thing at the time, and it definitely affected D'Angelo's career. And the signing in Carolina was definitely a rehab effort of his
Yes.
for his reputation. And it's not just the off ice things. This is a real thing that happened in the locker room and affected the balance of the team at the time. So
Yeah.
that's why I think a lot of people think he's like a risky project to take on.
Plus, at the salary he's at, the salary's too high. We know.
Yes.
We
Oh,
all know that.
most definitely. And he was only making 1 million with Carolina, which is fine to pay him again because he had gone through all this drama with the Rangers. He was a risk. And so, he was only gonna make 1 million or so at that time. And then the Flyers said, "Oh, I guess he's worth more now,"
Yeah.
and signed him for
Because
5 million. But
Carolina, I think, was going to pay him around 3, and I
yeah,
think that's about it.
yeah. Which seemed more reasonable to me, to be honest.
Yes.
Based on how he played in Carolina. I think, a $3 million contract, especially if he was gonna play a lot of minutes like that, I'd give him that at
Sure.
that time.
Yeah.
Now, not so much,
No.
but alright, so we talked about the lines a little bit with Mario's question, but Sean wants to know, what is the preferred center depth on the Flyers right now? Obviously, minus Couturier.
Hayes, Frost. You have to put Cates, and then take your pick on the fourth line. I mean, if you want them to be their best, then put Lawton as your fourth line center. But they're probably not going to do that. But if not, then it's Patrick Brown, and I'm not a big fan.
Yeah, I think the only way you put Lawton on the fourth line that makes sense is if you really split that third and fourth line time pretty evenly,
Yes.
right? And so, you have a third line that maybe plays a little bit less time and a fourth line that plays a little bit more time
Because
than
that's when
typical.
Lawton's a plus player, like
Right.
when he's playing down in the lineup and he can take advantage of some things. When he's playing up in the lineup, he's not nearly as good.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that you would want to put one person with him that's more offensively oriented.
Yes.
If Delorier is on that line, you need somebody like Wade Allison, right? Who's
Right.
going to
That would
be,
be good.
yeah, that's an okay fourth line for me
Me too.
at this time. All right, we have more mailbag questions coming up next. All right, Russ. So, obviously, with all of this going on, we have some big picture questions. And our first one is, what is the actual thing that would get Chuck Fletcher fired? Or is it just something that will definitely wait until the end of the season if it's happening?
It's a good question. I think it's going to be at the end of the season. I think he's going to step up and just do the president's job because he's a dual title. And I don't think he has to do anything else to actually get fired or removed. I think that's going to happen organically.
Yeah, we've talked about this before a little bit, and Chuck Fletcher is a prime candidate for failing up
Hmm.
in the Paul Holmgren School of Management.
Hmm.
And I think that unfortunately, Dave Scott seems to have this thing where he likes Chuck Fletcher and trusts him. And I, d- I wish we had somebody who knew a little bit more hockey in that role and could be a better evaluator of that management style, because clearly it has not worked.
Or be at
And,
games and see what's going on. Oops.
yeah, okay. Um, yeah, so I think that you're right in that there isn't going to be a precipitating incident here. It's an end of season thing. He'll probably be the president, like you said, and then Danny Briere will get the GM job or something along those lines. But
Yep.
I just don't see any new or different voices coming into the room, and I
It
think.
should. That should be what happens
Mhm.
in my estimation, but I don't know if it'll happen either. I agree.
Yeah, and the big question I have is Danny Briere a different voice, or is he already entrenched in Flyers land in a way that he wouldn't be a new or different voice in the
I
room?
mean, honestly, he doesn't have enough experience to really be a GM of what you would call a contending team. That said, he has been a part of this group for a little while now, so I think you still need the outside voice. I think you need the outside voice with more experience, with some winning experience. If they don't add that, they don't have any of that.
Yeah, it would be so awkward with Chuck Fletcher still there,
Yeah,
knowing
I mean,
everything.
if it's a matter of Chuck's, you know, gonna be at the games like always, but then only talk about business situations or maybe like the Flyers wives carnival or stuff like that, fine. He'll be fine with that. I don't think it would be awkward then. Uh, he's still getting paid a lot of money, so I think
That is true.
it would be okay, and that's the way it goes. But I just feel like just Danny Briere on his own is not enough of a change, and that's not a slight against Danny. It's just, hey, he could only do so much with the same guidance. He's going to have the same guidance there, basically.
I think this is a semi-related question with management, whether it's the current management or future management. How much time now does it realistically take for the Flyers to do a rebuild, given the current cap situation and the contracts?
If it were Russ Cohen doing the rebuild, it would have started at last year's trading deadline, like it should have,
Right.
and would have gone through this year and next year, and then we'd see where we're at. Now, a proper one or close to proper one is, because there's no set rule, would be this is part of it, next year's part of it, and probably the year after part of it. But the Flyers aren't going to do that. Like that's not going to happen. So what they're going to say is, we're going to retool this year. We're going to get younger. We're going to keep getting younger. We're going to get more draft picks, and then they're going to hope. Like that's what they're going to do. And the problem is, unless they truly beef up their player development way more than it is right now, their guys aren't developing quick enough. I think we could all acknowledge that. That has to change. Ian LePerrier aside, I mean, there are people on staff that either need help or they need to change some people on staff. Like, it's just players aren't developing quick enough. That's just the way it is. Something has to change with that.
I mean, we have the running joke of, 2 years away from being 2 years away,
Right.
and there's a certain truth to it. But I think you're right in terms of it should have officially started last year at the trade deadline. And the problem is the word realistically in the question, because realistically for the Flyers, yeah, I think it's going to take a year and a half to get out of the cap mess that they're in. And you have to hope that they can hold on to enough young players in that time period. And especially because they have so many RFA contracts that are question marks at this point still.
Hmm.
You know, check in at the end of the season, we might have a different answer on that front. But I still think some of those guys are question marks because we don't know what they can do at the NHL level yet. And that's a problem too. And that was a big thing we talked about at the beginning of the season was
Yes.
we got to know what we have here so that we can expedite this rebuild process that they're not calling a rebuild. And so I really think that is the Achilles heel, right? Is that in terms of depth players, in terms of the young guys knowing who to keep and who to let go, I don't know that they have the right answers now. And I fear that they're going to try and get more veteran contracts because those are more known entities at this point. And I don't like that approach because you got to draft and develop from within. And I like what you said about getting, additional player development staff to help support these players. So we really do understand what we have out there.
Yeah, I mean, to me, that's a big thing. Just getting players isn't enough. Just drafting players isn't enough. Player development is a good 35% of deciding if that player is going to be a long-time NHLer or not. So it's nice to make trades and get younger players. But again, even someone like Owen Tippett still needs work. We could see it. He still needs work. We don't know what the end of the rainbow is for Owen Tippett yet. And we're, a good portion into his Flyers career already. So,
Yeah.
that's those kinds of things. It's hard to make, again, in the past, they would make decisions on the hope of this guy getting healthy and the hope of that guy getting healthy. They can't go into next season with the hope of Cam Atkinson being fully back to himself and Couturier being fully back to himself, even if they're playing. You have to sort of make a judgment call and say, okay, maybe we have to tap it down a little bit and say, maybe Atkinson is now a second line guy. Maybe Couturier is now a second line guy. Like, we have to start looking at this and start getting better around that.
I think so too. It's very daunting and I don't envy anybody in
No,
this job right now.
no, but I would just like to see them be more realistic instead of pie in the sky. Because, like you said the other day, there's always this great hope, and lately, hope is not a plan.
All right, switching gears, we have a couple of good holiday
All right.
questions for you. Get off like the heavy stuff. It is mid Hanukkah right now, and so of course the big question is sour cream or applesauce on your latkes, Russ.
Yeah, I'm an applesauce guy. I don't know why. Sour cream is perfectly fine. I just have always, I guess it's the sweet and savory mix. I just feel like that's a good mix.
I'm an applesauce person too, because it's tart too. It's
Yeah,
not
yeah. If it's the
super
right
sweet.
applesauce, yeah.
Yeah. So if you get an unsweetened applesauce on a latke, that's the best. I do not like sour cream at all. I will
Okay.
not use, but unless it's like in a recipe where you don't like actually taste the sour
It's, yeah,
cream.
mixed in and it's like you don't
Yeah.
know. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I would not have sour cream on a latke. Another food question, Russ. What is your favorite holiday food and one that you hate?
I'll go with the one I hate first, and that's the ginger. So gingerbread. I don't mind ginger like as a spice, but like gingerbread men, all that stuff, I hate it. Absolutely hate it. Have no use for it. Latkes is certainly one of the things I like. Matzo ball soup. I will eat more matzo ball soup during this. And it's funny because you don't always have to go to a Jewish establishment for the latkes or the matzo ball soup. There's a lot of diners out there that can
Yep.
pull it off. So that's
Yeah.
a little tip there.
But that is a very good point. Yeah, I think, I I don't really eat much of the like Christmas holiday stuff because I just don't have occasion to. But um, like for Passover, I hate gefilte fish. That is for
Really?
sure.
I have a jar in the fridge. Oh,
Oh,
I love it.
oh, it is
With a little
just
horseradish? Oh, it's great.
I can't do it, Russ. I
Okay.
just can't do
I
it.
understand. It's acquired. It is. It's an acquired
Yeah.
thing.
But I do love matzo ball soup. That
Okay.
is one thing I can have like any time of year.
Anytime.
I think
Yeah, me too.
yeah, matzo ball soup is really good. And I love a good kugel, whether it's potato or noodle.
See,
I'll
I'm a
take it.
potato kugel. The noodle kugel, not as much. But
Yeah,
I'll
I
try
like them
all
both.
kugel. Yeah, I'll try
Yeah.
all kugel because kugel is like a thing that's not around as much anymore. It's harder to find.
Yeah, well, I make it, but
Ah, there you go.
yeah. All right. Wrapping up with our Flyers fun thing. Of course, some Flyers players were out and about giving gifts to people in the community. This time it was Scott Lawton, Wade Allison, Zach McEwen, Nick Seeler, and Egor Zamula. And they got some toys from the holiday toy drive. And it's always good
It
when the
was nice.
Flyers get into the community this time of year. And yeah, lots and lots of kids' toys. Very jealous of those kids.
Yep. Yep. It was a nice scene. Good job, Flyers.
All right. That'll do it for today's show. We will be back again tomorrow. We'll have a prospect preview and we're going to be talking about the Leafs. It's a daytime game we got coming up. And so,
Still not really clear on this because today I was amongst some Canadians on another show, and some said kids have off, and others said 23rd. Like they still go to school on the 23rd, depending on where they are in Ontario. So I'm assuming they have this as sort of like a kids game. But then somebody else said maybe it's just a getaway game, like for baseball, because it's the holiday after that, and so maybe it's
yeah.
more that.
I don't know, but we'll have an afternoon game to talk about against a very good Toronto Maple Leafs team, and we will do that tomorrow. Thanks so much for listening. Of course, if you want your mailbag question answered, you can tweet us at Locked On Flyers. You can email us at lockedonflyers@gmail. I'm Rachel. I'm on Twitter at rmiriam. That's RMIRIAM.
I'm Russ. I'm at Sportsology, SPORTSOLOGY.
Thanks for making Locked On Flyers your first listen. For your next listen, check out the Locked On Sports Today podcast. It's the biggest stories of the day, plus instant reactions, big game recaps, and their take of the day. It's available wherever you get your podcasts.